Most of people have been given a specific lens through which to view faith. It's a lens crafted by the modern world, and it focuses on things like belief, personal salvation, and creed. When you look at Judaism through this lens, it absolutely looks like a religion. You see synagogues, prayers, and holy books, all the familiar elements. But what if you changed the lens? What if you used a lens that focuses on peoplehood, law, memory, and the rhythm of time? Suddenly, the picture changes entirely. The synagogue isn't just a place of prayer. It's a portable capital for a nation without borders. The Holy Book isn't just a text of beliefs, it's a nation's constitution. The rituals aren't just about connecting with God, they are also the binding practices of a civilization. This article is about trying on that second lens. It's an invitation to see Judaism, not for what you've been told it should be, but for what it actually is. A vast, intricate, and beautiful blueprint for living. If you open a toolbox and see a hammer, you'd call it a hammer. That's exactly what happens with Judaism. The modern world has a toolbox labeled religion. Inside are tools like faith, creed, and prayer. When people see Judaism, they spot these tools and rightly say, "Ah, a religion." But what they've missed is the size of the toolbox. Judaism isn't the small religion toolbox. It's a master craftsman's full workshop. Inside, you will indeed find the tools of faith and prayer, but you will also find the tools of law, history, language, humor, peoplehood, time. This article is a tour of that entire workshop. You'll see how Judaism is used to build a complete life, a resilient community, and an enduring civilization. You'll discover that calling it just a religion is like calling a master carpenter's workshop just a hammer. It's not wrong, but it misses the true scale and purpose of the thing. If I would give you a map of Jerusalem, it will show you the sacred sites, the Western Wall, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the Dome of the Rock. It's a map of faith. It shows you the pathways to prayer, the rituals, the beliefs. It's a valid and useful map. When you look at Judaism through this map, it clearly looks like a religion. But now, what if I give you a different kind of map of the very same city? One that doesn't just show the surface. One that reveals the ancient water systems dug by Judean kings, the hidden layers of archaeology from First Temple times, the legal boundaries of who is a citizen, the agricultural terraces that fed the population, and the network of study halls where law and ethics were debated for millennia. This map doesn't contradict the first one. It encompasses it. It explains why the city is where it is, how its people survived conquest and exile, and what truly binds them together across time. It is a map of civilization. This article provides that second map. I will explore the deep structure of Judaism, not its spiritual sites, but its legal bedrock, its historical rivers, and the living network of its people. You will see that Judaism is the operating system for a nation. The religion is just one of the most visible features on its surface. This adapted audio is based on the article Judaism is Not a Religion, It is a Way of Life by Sami Bsoul. Everything you think you know about Judaism is probably wrong. Forget what you've been told. Judaism is not a religion. Judaism is not a belief you hold. It is a life you cannot escape, a story you are born into or join through dedication, and carry forward every day. The modern world defines religion as a set of beliefs, a private faith, a weekly service, a compartment, a segment of life, one room in the vast house of existence. Judaism was never designed to be a room. It is the blueprint for the entire house. Judaism defies the modern definition of religion. It always has. It is not a segment of life. It is the operating system for all of it. A comprehensive, all-encompassing way of being, an ancient constitution for existence. It is about what you do, not just what you believe. Not about what you think on your day off, but about how you live every day. From the moment you wake, how you eat, how you work, how you rest, how you trade, how you marry, how you bury. Judaism turns the mundane into the sacred, the ordinary into the intentional. This is not a semantic debate. It is a fundamental category error. To call Judaism a religion is to misunderstand it completely. It is to see a single tree and miss the entire forest. To look at an ecosystem and see only a branch. Judaism is the active practice of a sovereign peoplehood. It is a sovereign legal system, halakha, the standing law of its people. It legislates everything, ethics and economics, agriculture and anatomy. It is a binding framework for life. Other faiths influence. Judaism legislates. Other faiths inspire. Judaism governs and inspire. Judaism is a tribal identity bound by law, land, and shared destiny. You can be an atheist and still be a Jew. You cannot be a theological atheist Christian or a theological atheist Muslim. At best, you can only be a lapsed one. This is not a matter of degree. It is a difference of kind. Well, you can be a cultural Catholic, but you are, theologically, a lapsed one. In Judaism, the lapsed are still Jews. The identity is innate. The practice is a choice. A Jew can be deeply observant or completely secular and still remain Jewish, because Judaism is not about what you believe. It is about who you are. Other faiths have followers. Judaism has members. It is inherited citizenship in a nation that exists beyond land, beyond borders. Its capital is the Jewish home. Its senate is the Beit Midrash, the house of study. Its territory is community. Its sovereignty is expressed in ritual and law. Other faiths have clergy. Judaism has rabbis, not priests of theology, but jurists and legislators of national life. To call Judaism a religion is like calling the ocean a swimming pool. It shrinks the vast into the narrow. It mistakes the nation for a club. Other worldviews have philosophy. Judaism has jurisprudence. One is a lens to see the world. The other is a toolkit to build it, sustain it, and judge it. Other groups have believers. Judaism has constituents. Belief is optional. Membership is default. Other institutions have theologians. Judaism has poskim, legal decisors. They do not ask, what is true? They ask, what must be done? Their primary output is not creeds, but legal responsa, teshuvot. Judaism is not belief. It is civilization. It is peoplehood. It is a way of life. It is language, memory, history, law, humor, and time. A living inheritance carried whether or not you ever set foot in a synagogue. Chapter 1. What is a religion? The modern world thinks it knows what that word means. A religion is a creed, a belief system, a set of doctrines, a private conviction, a weekly service, a segment of life set aside for faith. That is the dictionary definition. That is the cultural assumption. But this definition is not ancient. It is not universal. It is not neutral. It is Christian. This framework was cemented during the European Enlightenment, which sought to privatize faith and separate it from public life. In this model, religion became a matter of personal belief, distinct from law, science, and politics. Christianity built the modern category of religion. It defined faith as belief, salvation as confession, belonging as agreement with doctrine. It built a system where the central question is, what do you believe? Islam shares this orientation. Submission to God is defined through belief in the Shahada, the testimony of faith. Confession and creed mark the boundary of belonging. This is why in the modern world, religion means faith. It means dogma. It means belief. But Judaism does not fit. It never has. One might point to other Eastern traditions like Hinduism or Buddhism as non-creedal alternatives, but these are often philosophies or spiritual paths one can adopt. Judaism is different. It is not a philosophy one chooses. It is a people one is born into or joins. It is a national identity with a legal system. Judaism does not begin with creed. It begins with covenant. A creed is a checklist of propositions to which one must assent. A covenant is a binding contract. It is a story of mutual obligation between a people and their God. It is a legal framework for a relationship, not a statement of belief, but a bond of peoplehood, not a declaration of faith, but a shared destiny. Judaism has no single dogma, no Nicene Creed, no Shahada, no central statement that defines who is in and who is out. You can be a Jew without believing in God. You cannot be a Christian without Christ. You cannot be a Muslim without Allah. Judaism does not hinge on salvation. It does not divide the world into the saved and the damned. It does not promise heaven for belief or hell for denial. Its central concern is not, what do you believe? But how do you live? Judaism is action over assent, deed over creed. The classic example is the famous Talmudic story of the convert who asked Hillel to teach him the entire Torah while standing on one foot. Hillel did not recite a creed. He did not demand belief in God's unity. He said, "What is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor. That is the whole Torah. The rest is commentary. Now go and study." The answer was a command to ethical action, followed by study, not a demand for belief. And this is where the modern world commits its mistake. It takes a Christian concept of religion, belief, confession, creed, and forces Judaism into that box. This is the category error, the fundamental misunderstanding. Judaism is not a religion in the Christian sense. It is not about what you confess. It is not about private devotion. It is about how you live, how you act, and who you are. Judaism is a civilization, a peoplehood, a law, a way of life. To call Judaism a religion is to misunderstand it from the ground up. It is to measure it with the wrong ruler. It is to force it into categories it never claimed. The question for Judaism is not what is true. The question is, what must be done? Chapter 2. Judaism as peoplehood. Judaism is a people. Am Yisrael, the people of Israel. This phrase appears again and again in the Torah. Not the believers, not the congregation of the faithful, the people, a family grown into a nation. From the beginning, Judaism was not built around a creed. Abraham was not handed a theology to confess. He was called into a covenant, a bond of peoplehood and destiny. His descendants became a family. That family became tribes. Those tribes became a nation. Judaism is not an idea you subscribe to. It is a people you belong to. Shared ancestry, covenant, destiny. When the Israelites stood at Sinai, they did not recite a creed. They did not sign a doctrinal statement. They entered into a covenant, a national covenant. The words were clear. You shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Nation, not sect. Covenant, not confession. This covenant was not a test of faith, but the constitution for this new nation, a constitution known as halakha, literally the way to walk. Its purpose was to shape how this people lived, creating a society that would reflect divine values in the most mundane aspects of daily life. This covenant was binding on the people as a whole, not only on the most devout. A Jew could be faithful or rebellious, pious or skeptical, and still be inside the covenant. Even in biblical times, there were skeptics. Prophets railed against idol worshippers, doubters, backsliders, but never declared them not Jewish. They were wayward members, not ex-members. This is the first paradox of Jewish identity. Belonging precedes belief. Membership, not faith. In Christianity, to stop believing is to stop being Christian. In Islam, to reject the Shahada is to exit Islam. Belief is the gate. In Judaism, there is no gate. You are born into the people. You inherit it. You carry it whether or not you live it. You may be faithful, you may be secular, you may be atheist. You may reject God and Torah entirely and still be Jewish. At the same time, Judaism is also profoundly a faith. For millions of Jews, belief in God, devotion to Torah, and daily prayer are the heartbeat of their lives. What I'm saying, that faith is unimportant, but that membership in the Jewish people does not depend on it. History has proven this again and again. Take Baruch Spinoza, the 17th century philosopher excommunicated by the Amsterdam Jewish community. He rejected divine law, rejected the chosenness of Israel, rejected the binding force of Torah. He was cast out of the synagogue, his books banned. And yet, centuries later, we still call him a Jew. His ideas, though hostile to tradition, are discussed in Jewish philosophy courses worldwide. He could leave Judaism in practice. He could never erase it in identity. Or consider the millions of Jews who abandoned observance in 19th century Europe, swept up in the Enlightenment and modern nationalism. They stopped keeping kosher, stopped observing Shabbat, stopped attending synagogue. Some, like the poet Heinrich Heine, called conversion their ticket of admission into European culture, yet remained inextricably linked to the Jewish people in their writing and how the world saw them. But to their neighbors, to the governments that ruled them, to the anti-Semites who targeted them, they remain Jews. Their passports, their ancestry, their names mark them as part of a peoplehood they could not shed. This is why we speak today of secular Jews, cultural Jews, atheist Jews. They may not believe in God, but they still gather for Passover Seders. They may not pray in synagogue, but they still feel bound by Jewish memory, Jewish humor, Jewish history. David Ben-Gurion, Israel's first prime minister, was a secular socialist who rarely set foot in a synagogue. Yet he saw himself as part of the eternal Jewish people, entrusted with its destiny. Albert Einstein, who rejected traditional religious practice, still called himself proudly Jewish and spoke of Jewish values shaping his worldview. Franz Kafka, plagued with ambivalence about Judaism, nevertheless wrote with Jewish anxieties embedded in every page. Even as some Jews reject ritual or God, countless others embrace them fully. The same peoplehood contains both devotion and doubt, demonstrating that faith is vibrant, even while identity is immutable. This continues today. The proudest, most identifying Jews in the world might be those who pack secular Jewish community centers for holiday celebrations, who fight against anti-Semitism, who champion Israeli causes, and who then get into their cars and drive home on a Friday night, completely unaware they are violating the very Sabbath they just celebrated. Their belonging is absolute, their belief and practice entirely their own. These figures, atheist, secular, cultural, do not believe alike, but all belong. The indelible mark of peoplehood. Judaism is not belief, it is belonging. It is ancestry, covenant, and destiny bound together. This is why anti-Semitism persists across centuries. Anti-Semites never stopped to ask if their victims believed in God or kept kosher. To Hitler, a Jew who kept Shabbat was the same as a Jew who never lit a candle. In his eyes, faith was irrelevant. Blood was enough. This is the darkest proof of Jewish peoplehood. Anti-Semitism is not a heresy hunt, it is a form of racism. The Nazis meticulously traced Jewish ancestry back generations, searching for that one Jewish grandparent that marked a person for death. Belief was irrelevant. Their definition of a Jew was a bloodline definition, a peoplehood definition, one that Jews themselves would recognize, even as they were murdered by it. The world itself recognizes Jewish peoplehood, even when Jews forget it. This is the paradox at the heart of Judaism. A Jew may be fully religious or fully secular. A Jew may embrace Torah or deny it. A Jew may believe in God or not believe at all. And yet all are still Jews. Judaism honors faith and devotion, but it also survives and even thrives in those whose path is secular, skeptical, or culturally focused. Belief matters deeply, but it is never the sole criterion of belonging. Judaism is not a religion in the sense of faith-based membership. It is not a club you join by signing a statement of beliefs. It is a people you are born into or enter through adoption, conversion. Belief can change, practice can change, belonging does not. That is why Judaism endures, because it is not an ideology that can be argued away. It is not a theology that can be disproven. It is a peoplehood, carried in blood, in memory, in covenant. Judaism is not about what you believe, it is about who you are. Chapter 3. The Legal Civilization. Judaism is law, not metaphorically, not as a moral suggestion. Law, binding, complete, comprehensive. This is what sets Judaism apart from every other religion in the modern world. While others offer belief systems, Judaism offers a blueprint for living, a legal civilization. It is called halacha, the path. It is not optional. It is not theoretical. It governs every aspect of life, from the moment you wake until the moment you sleep, from birth to death. It is a complete legal framework. The Torah does not merely teach stories or moral principles. It legislates. It is a constitution, a code, a manual for life. It tells you what to eat, kosher laws that define purity, community, and discipline. When to work, Shabbat as a legally mandated day of rest. How to trade, laws of honesty in business, interest and contracts. How to marry and divorce, marriage contracts, ketubah, as binding civil instruments. How to grieve and bury, ritual and law-guiding mourning. Every action, no matter how mundane, falls under halakha. Eating bread, lighting a candle, conducting business. Even tying shoes in the morning has legal commentary in the Talmud. This is not theory, it is applied life. Judaism does not have a priesthood like Christianity. It does not have a hierarchy of salvation. Rabbis are not intermediaries between humans and God. Rabbis are jurists, judges, legislators of the national life. They interpret the law, resolve disputes, and issue legal rulings called responsa, teshuvot. In medieval Europe, a rabbi's responsum could decide whether a contract was valid, whether a marriage could be recognized, whether a loan was enforceable. Rabbis were the constitutional authorities of Jewish life. One famous example. Rabbi Moses Isserles in 16th century Poland wrote glosses on the Shulchan Aruch to reconcile Ashkenazi practice with Sephardi legal codes, ensuring the law remained alive and applicable across communities. His work still guides Jewish life today. Rabbis are legislators, not preachers. Their sermons are explanations, not mandates. Their authority comes from knowledge, not ordination. The Beit Midrash, the house of study, is the beating heart of Jewish legal civilization. It is not merely a classroom. It is a parliament, a council, a laboratory of law. This authority is rooted in a radical Talmudic principle. Rabbis once rejected a voice from heaven that intervened on a legal matter, quoting the Torah. It is not in heaven. Deuteronomy 30:12. The law had been given to humans, and its interpretation was now the domain of human reason and rigorous debate. Scholars debate, challenge, interpret, and refine the legal code. The Talmud is the record of these debates. In these halls, Jewish law evolves while remaining anchored in tradition. Questions that arise in every generation, from commercial ethics to ritual observance, are hashed out, argued over, and codified. For example, during the rise of banking in medieval Europe, rabbis had to interpret halakha for interest on loans, contracts between merchants, and international trade. They wrote responsa to guide Jews living under Christian and Muslim rulers, ensuring compliance with halakha while navigating foreign laws. Halakha is not abstract. It structures life. Food, keeping kosher is not merely dietary, it is a system of discipline, mindfulness, and communal identity. Work. Shabbat is a weekly constitutional pause, a legal rhythm that sanctifies time itself. Family. Marriage, divorce, inheritance, codified for fairness, continuity, and stability. Economy. Ethical commerce is law, not optional. Theft, fraud, deception, all legislated with precision. In 18th century Poland, rabbis even issued rulings on the proper use of watermills, bridges, and marketplaces, demonstrating that law touched every facet of life, not just ritual. The genius of Judaism is that its law adapts while remaining rooted. Responsa allow rabbis to interpret ancient codes for new technologies, like electricity on Shabbat, driving on holidays, or medical interventions. Halakha is not static. It is alive. It binds the people, not just their belief. This is why Jews could survive centuries of exile, persecution, and displacement. They carried a portable civilization, a legal and moral framework that traveled with them, anchored their communities, and ensured continuity. Let's sum up what we've covered. Judaism's legal civilization explains the paradox we saw so far. Atheist Jews, secular Jews, cultural Jews, still Jews. Halakha binds the people, even when faith is absent. Identity is not belief, it is subjecthood to law and tradition. To understand Judaism, you must see it as a nation with laws, not a religion with creeds. Its rabbis are lawmakers, its courts are institutions, its Beit Midrash is parliament. The Torah is constitution. Halakha is governance. Life is legislated in detail, from birth to death. Other civilizations have philosophy. Judaism has jurisprudence. Other faiths inspire. Judaism governs. Other religions debate the truth. Judaism debates what must be done. Judaism is not a religion. It is a legal civilization. A peoplehood defined by law, anchored in memory, carried through practice. Why Judaism is different beyond ritual rules. Yes, other religions have rules. Christianity has canon law. Islam has Sharia. Hinduism has Dharma. Buddhism has Vinaya. But notice the difference. In most religions, law governs ritual, moral guidance, or religious obligations. Rarely does it extend to every facet of daily life. In Judaism, halakha governs eating, business, marriage, burial, agriculture, commerce, labor, charity, and even mundane actions like tying shoes or waking up in the morning. Everything is law. There is no separate religious life compartment. In Christianity, obedience to canon law is secondary to faith and salvation. Belief comes first. In Islam, Sharia often centers on ritual and morality, interpreted differently across cultures. In Judaism, law is identity itself. Being Jewish is being subject to law. Halakha is not a supplement to life, it is the operating system of life. Judaism's rabbis are jurists and legislators, not priests or intermediaries. They do not mediate between God and humans. They rule, interpret, legislate. Their authority shapes reality and membership, not just ritual compliance. Other religions may have clerics, but Judaism has legislators of life. Judaism's legal civilization is self-renewing. The Talmud records centuries of debate. Responsa allow ancient codes to address modern problems. Electricity on Shabbat, driving on holidays, medical ethics. This is a living system of governance, not a static moral guide. Most religions define membership by belief. Judaism defines membership by birth and law. Belief is optional. Compliance with halakha binds the people together across centuries. It is law that preserves the nation, not faith alone. In short, other religions have rules. Judaism is rules. Other religions advise conduct. Judaism legislates existence. Other religions focus on faith and ritual. Judaism focuses on life itself, identity, community, and daily practice. Calling Judaism just another religion with rules is like calling a nation a club, or a constitution a suggestion. It misunderstands everything. Chapter 4. Time, not space. Judaism is not about buildings, not about holy places, not about temples or cathedrals. Judaism is about time. This prioritization was proven in fire and blood. In 70 CE, the Romans destroyed the Second Temple in Jerusalem, the central, sacred place in all Jewish life. Judaism faced extinction. Its response was not to rebuild the temple elsewhere. Instead, it transformed itself into a civilization of time. The synagogue and the study hall replaced the spatial focus of the temple. The detailed calendar, the rhythm of prayer, the weekly Shabbat, and the annual cycle of festivals became the new anchors of identity. When the place was lost, the time became everything. The Torah does not merely mark sacred sites, it marks sacred moments. Every day, every week, every year is structured, measured, sanctified. Judaism organizes life itself. It is a civilization in rhythm, a people governed by calendars, festivals, and cycles, not geography. Shabbat is not a day off. It is not a weekly ritual obligation. As the great 20th century theologian Abraham Joshua Heschel masterfully described it, Shabbat is a palace in time, a fortress of holiness that crowns the week. From Friday evening to Saturday night, the ordinary is transformed. Eating, resting, studying, being with family, all become sacred. The table is a throne. The candles are sentinels. The wine and bread are coronation rites. Shabbat teaches a profound lesson. Sanctity is not in space, it is in time. You do not enter holiness by going somewhere. You enter it by living it. You cannot visit Shabbat. You must observe it, inhabit it, become it. Even in exile, Jews could carry this palace in time wherever they went. In tiny apartments in Warsaw, shtetls in Poland, or urban flats in New York, the Shabbat table was a microcosm of national life, a protected space where the Jewish rhythm persisted. Judaism structures the year with festivals that are temporal markers, not just commemorations. Pesach, Passover, liberation from Egypt. History becomes living memory. Eating matzah, telling the story, the past becomes now. Shavuot, receiving the Torah at Sinai. Law and covenant re-enter the week. Sukkot, a festival of the harvest, of dwelling, of impermanence. Nature and agriculture guide ritual. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, reflection, repentance, renewal, a legal and spiritual recalibration for the year. Each festival sanctifies time, not place. The rhythm of the calendar aligns the individual with the collective, the present with memory, and the natural cycle with covenantal law. Even agriculture, planting, harvesting, leaving fields fallow, is codified. The Torah links human labor to sacred time. The land and its cycles are a living calendar, reminding Jews that life itself is structured, intentional, and holy. Time in Judaism is living history. It is memory embedded in ritual. Every cedar recalls Egypt. Every shofar blast recalls kingship, judgment, and redemption. Every reading of the Torah recalls Sinai and the covenant. History is not inert, it is reenacted and relived. Time is the medium through which Jewish identity survives. Even in the diaspora, when there was no temple in Jerusalem, the Jewish people carried their calendar as a portable nation. Time itself was the vessel of sovereignty. Judaism's obsession with time is not for nostalgia. It is a civilizational strategy. By structuring weeks, months, and years, Judaism disciplines life, instills memory, and preserves identity. Work is measured, rest is mandated. Joy and mourning are deliberate. Life is cyclical, anchored, intentional. Shabbat, festivals, agricultural cycles, fasts, and jubilees are the operating system of Jewish existence. They create rhythm where chaos might prevail. They turn ordinary days into a scaffold of holiness. This is why Judaism defies the category of religion. Most religions are focused on sacred spaces, churches, mosques, temples, pilgrimage sites. Judaism is focused on sacred time. It is not about where you are, it is about when you are. Time is its sacred architecture. Time is its law. You can destroy a temple, but you cannot destroy a Friday evening. This is the secret of its eternity. Judaism is not defined by geography, not by temples, capitals, or empires. For most of its history, Judaism has existed without territory, yet it has remained a coherent, self-governing civilization. A nation without borders is not an impossibility. It is Judaism. Where is the capital of Jewish life? Not Jerusalem alone, not a single city. The capital is the Jewish home. Every kitchen, every table, every Beit Midrash becomes a seat of governance, a center of ritual, a repository of culture. Where is the territory? Not land parcels or borders. The territory is community. This abstract concept had a concrete name, the Kehillah. Throughout the diaspora, from Venice to Vilna, the Kehillah was the officially recognized, self-governing Jewish community. It collected taxes, ran its own courts, provided education, and aid for the poor. It was a government within a government, a state without a state. Synagogues, schools, cemeteries, markets, these are the sovereign zones of Jewish life. Wherever Jews gather, they carry nationhood in practice, not in space. Law is sovereignty. Halakha governs, structures, protects. The covenant is citizenship. Membership in this nation is inherited, reinforced, and maintained by shared law, shared memory, and shared rituals. Exile and dispersion might seem like weakness. For many civilizations, losing territory is losing identity. Not for Judaism. The diaspora is the ultimate proof that Judaism is portable. In Babylon, Jews built academies and communities that preserved Torah and law for centuries. In medieval Spain, Jewish communities thrived under Muslim and Christian rulers, producing philosophy, poetry, and commerce, while maintaining halakha and identity. In Eastern Europe, the shtetls were tiny city-states of Jewish law, culture, and governance. The most dramatic example was the Council of the Four Lands, Va'ad Arba Aratzot, in 16th-18th century Poland-Lithuania. This was a full-fledged Jewish parliament that levied taxes, regulated commerce, and served as a supreme court. For over 2 centuries, this was the de facto government for most of the world's Jews, a sovereign entity that existed entirely without land or borders. Jews carried civilization in their heads, homes, and rituals, not on maps. The nation was everywhere its people were. Other civilizations rely on land to define authority. Judaism relies on law. The Torah is the constitution. Halakha is the governance. Rabbis are lawmakers and judges. The Beit Midrash is the parliament. Even without a state, Jewish life was sovereign. Courts ruled disputes. Taxes supported communal infrastructure. This is why the modern question, is Judaism a religion or a nationality, is a false dichotomy. For most of its history, Judaism was a nationality that expressed itself through a religious legal system. It was a nation whose territory was legal jurisdiction, not geography. Judaism is a nation without territory, yet it is not a diaspora of disjointed individuals. It is a civilization united by law, ritual, memory, and community. The world may scatter its members across continents, but Judaism remains a coherent living system. Borders can shift, kingdoms can rise and fall, but a Jewish home, a Beit Midrash, a table set for Shabbat, these are sovereign territory, wherever Jews dwell. Judaism proves a radical truth. A nation need not have land to be real. Citizenship need not require a passport. Sovereignty need not require borders. And the world has always recognized this. Anti-Semitism is the grim, eternal witness to Jewish nationhood. Persecutors from Pharaoh to Hitler never asked for a statement of faith. They traced bloodlines. They understood what modern thought has forgotten. Judaism is a people, a nation, a civilization. The world saw a nation without borders and tried to destroy it for what it was, even as others struggled to define what it is. Chapter 5. Faith Optional, Identity Immutable. Judaism does not ask, "Do you believe?" to determine membership. It does not measure devotion, piety, or orthodoxy to decide who counts. Judaism asks only one question: are you Jewish? Belief is optional. Practice is variable. Identity is immutable. In most religions, faith is the gate. In Christianity, believe or be excluded from salvation. In Islam, testify to the Shahada or exit the fold. Judaism is different. Membership does not hinge on belief in God, Torah, or mitzvot. You can be atheist, secular, skeptical, even hostile to Judaism, and still be a Jew. This is not theory. It is law and history. In medieval Spain, Jewish converts often returned to Judaism in practice or cultural identity after outwardly converting under pressure. Their faith may have been compromised, but membership was never erased. In Eastern Europe, millions of Jews lived fully secular lives in shtetls and cities. They rarely prayed, studied, or observed mitzvot. Yet they were the targets of pogroms and the bearers of Jewish identity. The 20th century provided the most potent proof: Soviet Jewry. For 70 years under state-enforced atheism, millions of Jews were completely severed from religious practice, Jewish education, and any expression of faith. They were, by any creedal definition, utterly lapsed. Yet, when the gates finally opened, they did not identify as ex-Jews or Russians of Jewish descent. They identified as Jews. They fought for the right to leave as Jews. Their identity, suppressed for generations, had remained immutable. The world recognized them as a distinct people, and so did they. Belief is irrelevant. Membership is inherited, binding, and enduring. In other religions, apostasy is real. Leave the faith, and you are no longer counted. In Judaism, there is no apostasy in the theological sense. You cannot lapse out. The born Jew carries permanent citizenship in a peoplehood defined by law and lineage. This is codified in the foundational legal principle: Yisrael, af al pi shechata, Yisrael hu. A Jew, even though he has sinned, is still a Jew. This Talmudic ruling makes it clear: transgression, heresy, or apathy does not nullify one's inherent status. The bond of peoplehood is legal and unbreakable. Baruch Spinoza rejected God and Torah. Excommunicated? Yes. Lost identity? Impossible. He remained Jewish, historically, culturally, and by blood. Secular Zionists, Reform Jews, atheist philosophers all demonstrate the same principle. Jewish identity persists regardless of belief. This is what makes Judaism civilization, not religion. Faith may vary, but citizenship remains. Judaism allows entry by choice, but it is not mere belief. Conversion is citizenship by adoption, rigorous, legal, and transformative. This process could not be more different from the Christian model of being born again through a personal declaration of faith. Conversion to Judaism involves both personal growth and formal commitment. It can transform one's outlook and values, while also requiring study of the laws, history, and language of the people, and a pledge to live according to its constitution, the Torah. The convert joins a people, subject to halakha, embraced into law and covenant. This is not symbolic. It is full membership. History shows the seriousness of this process. Medieval Europe. Converts had to study law, ritual, and practice under rabbinic supervision, sometimes for years before being fully accepted. Today, converts are treated equally in law, ritual, and community. Membership is real, not contingent on degrees of belief. Judaism is unique. Born Jews inherit membership, converts adopt membership. Belief is neither the prerequisite nor the measure of belonging. From birth, a Jew carries permanent membership. It is not granted by ceremony, confession, or acceptance. It is inherited. Mother, people, covenant, all confer citizenship automatically. This inheritance is not dependent on land, ritual, or religiosity. It is law, lineage, and covenant rolled into one unbreakable bond. In short, belief is optional. Identity is immutable. Membership is legal, social, and historical. Judaism is not a club. It is a nation, a civilization, a peoplehood that persists through faith, doubt, practice, or indifference. You can leave practice. You can reject God. You can even hate the law. You cannot leave the people. So we return to the central question. What is Judaism? It is a living community where every member, whether deeply devout or simply connected by heritage, belongs irrevocably. It is a tradition where the focus is not only on what one believes, but on being part of a shared story, a people, and a way of life. In this sense, Judaism is both a nation and a rich guiding framework for life, its laws, teachings, and values forming a manual for how to live, belong, and grow together. Chapter 6. Culture, Language, and Life. Judaism is not only law, ritual, and calendar. It is culture, civilization, life itself. Law structures existence, but culture enriches, carries, and animates it. To understand Judaism, you must see it as a civilization where language, humor, art, and memory are sacred infrastructure, as much as halakha or Shabbat. Hebrew is not merely a language. It is an operating system for Jewish life and thought. Every word carries law, history, and philosophy. Every letter encodes covenant, memory, and ritual. Prayer, Torah study, blessings, and poetry all converge in Hebrew, linking Jews across centuries and continents. In ancient Israel, Hebrew was the language of law, government, and scripture. In exile, it became the vehicle for study, debate, and preservation of identity. In modern Israel, it is both a living language and a reconnection to the millennia-long covenant. Hebrew transforms thought into practice. It is civilization encoded in letters. Hebrew alone could not carry the full spectrum of Jewish life. Diaspora languages became vessels of culture. Yiddish, the language of Ashkenazi life, humor, literature, satire, daily speech, and communal negotiation. It carried law, commerce, and story across Europe. Ladino, the Judeo-Spanish of Sephardic Jews, a vehicle for storytelling, liturgy, and moral teaching across the Mediterranean. Judeo-Arabic bridged scholarship, philosophy, and poetry for Jews in the Islamic world. These languages were more than communication. They encoded experience, memory, and identity, making ordinary speech a living vessel of civilization. Judaism does not separate sacred from secular. Culture itself is sacred. This fusion is known in Hebrew as the principle of kedusha, holiness, the idea that the divine is not confined to a temple but can be drawn into the mundane. There is no word for secular in biblical Hebrew because no aspect of life is meant to be outside the framework of a sanctified existence. Humor is moral, political, and existential, a tool for survival, critique, and communal cohesion. Jewish humor is often Sohr's humor, the humor of troubles. It serves a civilizational function of resilience. A classic Yiddish punchline, "How do we know the Messiah will be Jewish? Because no one else would wait so long and still have hope." This is both a joke and a profound theological statement. Literature and poetry preserve memory, debate law, and interrogate identity. When Sholem Aleichem wrote of Tevye the dairyman, he wasn't just creating a character. He was documenting the collision of traditional Jewish law, halakha, with modern secular ideas, using the intimate medium of story to explore a civilizational crisis. Art, music, and folklore encode history, memory, and values across generations. Every cultural expression reinforces the Jewish operating system. It teaches, corrects, celebrates, and preserves identity. Culture is an extension of law and ritual. Law lived in language and life. Law maintains membership. Ritual maintains rhythm. Language and culture maintain soul. This is what distinguishes Jewish culture from the folkways of other nations. For the Jewish people in exile, culture was their land, their state, and their institution. A book of Talmud, a collection of Yiddish stories, or a Ladino love song was not merely art. It was a deed to a portable homeland, a sovereign territory of the mind and spirit. Books written in Hebrew, Yiddish, or Ladino traveled with merchants and scholars. Jokes, songs, and stories passed from parent to child, embedding identity and values. Artifacts, texts, and customs acted as portable micro-territories of civilization. Culture, like law, is portable, adaptive, and sovereign. It is proof that Judaism is civilization, not just religion. It is living, evolving, and transmitted whether one prays, believes, or merely eats at the Shabbat table. Judaism is law, ritual, language, and culture intertwined. Every word, every story, every laugh carries identity. Civilization is preserved not just in courts or synagogues, but in kitchens, marketplaces, libraries, and living rooms. Therefore, to reduce Judaism to a faith is to ignore its beating heart. It is to study the skeleton of law and ritual while missing the flesh, blood, and soul of culture that gives it life. Judaism is a civilization. Its law is the skeleton, its culture is the living body, and its people are the spirit that animates it all. You cannot have one without the other. This is not a religion, it is a world. Chapter 7. Judaism versus Religion. If you look at it one way, Judaism has many elements you find in other religions, prayers, rituals, and moral teachings. So yes, in that sense, you could call it a religion. But if you look closer, it works differently. In Judaism, belonging comes before belief, law guides life beyond faith, and a shared peoplehood transcends geography. Across law, history, culture, and identity, these patterns are consistent. So, when we ask, is Judaism a religion? The answer is clear. It is not a religion in the usual sense. It is the operating system of a people, a framework that shapes how a nation lives, learns, and thrives together. Judaism is not a religion, not a faith, not a creed, not a spiritual hobby. And yet, the modern world insists on calling it one. Why? Because the dominant model of religion comes from Christianity. Religion is what you believe. Faith first, salvation first, doctrine first, ritual is secondary. Judaism does not fit this model. It never did. Religion is what you believe. In Christianity, belief defines membership. Faith brings salvation. Disbelief excludes you. Rituals are expressions of that faith. Doctrine dominates law and practice. This is what scholars of religion call a creedal or confessional model. The center of gravity is orthodoxy, right belief. Your standing within the faith community is dependent on your assent to a set of doctrinal propositions. In Islam, submitting to God and affirming the Shahada defines the believer. Prayer, fasting, and moral conduct matter, yes, but always to reinforce faith and membership. In most world religions, the core question is, what do you believe? Membership and identity hinge on thought, creed, or spiritual alignment. Judaism is what you do and who you are. Judaism flips this entirely. It asks, who are you and how do you live? Being Jewish is membership in a peoplehood, not assent to a creed. Observing halakha governs every act, from waking to sleeping, from work to marriage, from commerce to community. Observance can happen with belief, doubt, skepticism, or even atheism. Membership is not belief-dependent. Rabbis are not priests or intermediaries. They are jurists, legislators, and interpreters of law. The Beit Midrash is not a sanctuary. It is parliament. Judaism's authority is practical and civil, not doctrinal. Faith is optional. Identity is immutable. You cannot lapse out of Judaism. The born Jew is a citizen by inheritance. The convert is a citizen by adoption. Belief is secondary. Life, law, and identity come first. Why calling Judaism a religion shrinks it? Religion is private, compartmentalized, belief-centered. Judaism is public, comprehensive, and law-centered. Calling Judaism a religion reduces centuries of law, ritual, culture, and memory into a compartment, a weekly service, a creed, a belief system. This misclassification has a real-world cost. It creates a false and painful dichotomy for many Jews. The secular Jew who feels a deep connection to Jewish peoplehood, history, and culture is told they are not religious, and thus their Jewishness is somehow lesser. The observant Jew is pigeonholed into the religious box, their national and cultural identity ignored. This framework, borrowed from Christianity, fractures Jewish identity into a binary that Judaism itself never recognized. Judaism is not a hobby. It is a blueprint for living, a legal civilization, and a peoplehood that exists through law, culture, and memory. Religion asks, "Do you believe?" Judaism asks, "Who are you, and how do you live?" Belief is optional. Law, practice, and identity are central. To call Judaism a religion is to misunderstand it completely. Judaism is civilization encoded in action, peoplehood, and time, a portable, enduring, sovereign system that cannot be confined to a category invented for faith alone. This is what it all comes down to. Judaism has survived exile, persecution, and centuries of dispersion. But the modern world presents new challenges: secularization, assimilation, and the dominance of the nation-state. In Europe and the Americas, Jews became citizens of secular nations. Law, culture, and ritual could be optional. Belief was framed as personal choice. For some, assimilation meant abandoning ritual, Hebrew, and communal norms. Yet even secular Jews remained Jewish, because Judaism is not belief-dependent. Think of the iconic Jewish writer Franz Kafka, plagued by doubt and alienation, or the fervently secular founders of the State of Israel, David Ben-Gurion and Golda Meir. They rarely set foot in a synagogue, but they were undeniably, fundamentally Jewish. Their identity was not a question of faith, but of peoplehood, history, and destiny. Membership is inherited, identity is immutable, and halakha, culture, and rhythm continue to bind the people. Secularization tests the resilience of Jewish civilization, but it does not dissolve it. The system of law, memory, and community survives even when God is absent from daily thought. Modern political systems define nations by land, language, or religion. Jews, dispersed and stateless for millennia, never fit this mold. Modern Western nations are built on the idea of demos, a political community of citizens. Judaism represents an ethnos, a people bound by shared descent, law, history, and fate. For 2 millennia, Jews maintained this ethnos without the apparatus of a state, a historical anomaly that the modern world struggles to categorize. Judaism does not require territory to exist. Home is capital. Community is territory. Law is sovereignty. Diaspora life demonstrates a portable civilization. Identity carried through law, calendar, and culture, not borders. In this context, Judaism challenges the modern idea that a peoplehood must be tied to a single state. The modern state of Israel codifies what Jews have lived for centuries. Law, culture, identity, and memory intertwined. Now it is visible, what Judaism always carried in portable form: a nation defined by law, ritual, and shared destiny, not by belief alone. Globalization accelerates assimilation. Secular values, universalism, and pluralism challenge inherited frameworks. Yet Judaism has survived the rise and fall of empires, exile, persecution, and modernity itself. Judaism does not depend on belief. It depends on membership, practice, and covenantal law. Identity persists through ritual, memory, law, and culture, even in a world where faith is optional. In an increasingly rootless and fragmented world, Judaism's model offers a radical alternative: that meaning and belonging are not found in belief alone, but are built through practice, ritual, and community. It demonstrates that identity can be durable without being dogmatic, and that a people can be united by law and memory without requiring uniformity of thought. Judaism will continue because it is not a religion vulnerable to theological doubt. It is a civilization resilient to belief and ideology. The argument is complete. The evidence is clear. Judaism was never a religion to be believed. It was, is, and always will be a civilization to be lived. This is not a matter of opinion. It is a matter of definition.